Erie, Pennsylvania. A small town which was once home to a music scene similar to the likes of Cleveland or Buffalo, now is considered a dead city by many. Venues are closing, bands are breaking up. What changed? I spoke to two Erie residents involved with the scene, Corey Miller, who was involved with Erie's metal scene since the mid 2000s, and Elvis Maryshine, who ran a venue in Erie.
So from what I was always told, like, Erie was pretty poppin'. Like, it's 6 hours away from Chicago and then it's 8 hours away from New York City. So, like, it was a good stop in the middle. Because a lot of times, like, that's how they did tours. Like, they basically put the stops to be as long as people could stand to be on the bus without killing each other. So, like, I know Alice Cooper played in Erie. I know Bob Dylan played in Erie. I know the Doobie Brothers played in Erie. Cher played in Erie. It had a similar, from what I understand, had a really similar market value to Cleveland, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh, which are considered B-level markets. A-level markets are like LA, New York City, Miami. Erie is now probably like a C or a D-level market. And it's just, I remember like when I was a teenager and I lived like 40 miles like out in the sticks, my mom would like drive me in to like see shows at Basement Transmissions or PACA. And like I remember like when we had lots of shows like all the time, like still like back like pre 2015, like there was still like a lot of like heavier stuff and like the punk scene was like still pretty vibrant. And then what seemed to happen, it was like there was some shifts going on. Whether it was like, you know, people were getting older and they're getting married and having kids. But it was just like, it seemed for some reason like the scene kind of started losing some of its community aspect, and I'm not really sure why. And, you know, when you start seeing like a decline in the scene, like what it has seems to have a lot to do with it is like younger kids aren't going to shows anymore. Like nobody's bringing the younger kids to the venues. Like they're not getting exposed to the culture of the community of like the punk scene or the hardcore scene or whatever. And it's not that it's not necessarily that those kids don't exist here, but they're not being connected to the rest of the community. Definitely is like frustrating to see the fluctuation. And it's gonna definitely take a lot to get Erie back up to speed of like even where it was like 10 years ago. I was booked out completely for 2020 by the 1st of February, and I was working on 2 festivals that had like pretty decent budgets. I had actually gotten hired to book festivals in Erie, which was like super cool. Like I think I want to say for like a solid 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, we were still like sending out booking emails and like all this stuff. You know, like we never thought, like a lot of people in the music industry didn't think that like everything was just gonna come to a screeching halt.
Well, I started off in the music scene, you know, back in the early 2000s. I started off, I had an older friend that took me to a show, and I just kind of spiraled from there. You know, I went to a few shows and then quickly ended up in the metal scene. I went and saw a band called War of Ages, and from there, you know, the next easily 10, 15 years of my life, I was pretty into the metal and hardcore music and that whole scene. It was my childhood. I mean, I think probably in around 2003, I think, you know, I got into the hardcore part of the scene with the straight edge community, and like back then it was definitely, you know, you didn't even have to know people, but in that time frame back in the early 2000s and the hardcore straight edge, you know, scene, you went to shows and everybody was like your family. Like every week there would be some new show that was coming, you know, the the printed out on colored paper like flyers that just got handed around. It was a lifestyle. It was, you know, every day you were talking to your buddies about like a new band or new music or, you know, or something, and just bands would come in from Erie because, you know, at the time, like that was, we had a small community, but every band that ever came, you know, always said they wanted to come back because we had more heart and soul than anywhere they've ever played. It was just, I don't know, I mean, it was like my childhood. The death of the music scene in Erie, I feel was definitely somewhere around, you know, 2015. A lot of the venues, you know, and for whatever reason, like they weren't making enough money, you know, like it was a lot of local bands. So they weren't making a lot of money, and they closed down, and there was just no real places for people to play shows. I mean, I think for a lot of us, especially in the hardcore scene, the straight edge community, there was a lot of us that, you know, it meant something to us when we were younger. It meant, you know, like it was a message that we resonated with. And as we got older, I think, you know, everybody grows and they learn. And I think it just kind of didn't mean the same thing to a lot of us. But I feel like it was definitely good. Like, it kept a lot of us out of trouble. I mean, and me especially. I was not the most behaved person, but, you know, you went to a show, you went with your buddies, you know, you had something to do. It kept you from going out and causing mischief. Definitely like to see the scene revived in Erie. You know, I mean, a lot of people call Erie in the music scene, they call it Dead City. But I feel like every few years there's some type of a revival. It's not going to be the same music, you know. It went from alternative music to hardcore and metal, and then to pop punk. You know, I don't know what music will be next, but I'm sure at some point, you know, maybe not anytime soon, but sometime in the future somebody will revive the music scene in Erie.